Hey friends, this is Sheet and my guest today is Yvette Young, who's mostly known for her innovative tapping and fingerstyle guitar technique. Growing up in a classical music household, Yvette began studying piano at the age of 4 and then later violin at 7, and then later she taught herself how to play guitar as well. While her solo projects feature her singing and multi-instrumental playing, she also plays in a touring progressive post-stroke band called Covet. And today we're going to talk about how her background in classical music has an impact on her style today, and we're gonna talk about some practical tips for all aspiring musicians as well. This episode was sponsored by the Dario, but more about them later. Alright, Yvette, it's so nice to meet you. I'm so happy you are here with me on Sheet today. This is good to have you here.
It's a pleasure. I also like the name. It's very clever.
I know. Some people, it's a name that people either love or hate, so I think I did a good job on this one.
Polarizing is good.
Yeah, polarizing is good. That's good for society. That's an amazing thing to do. Anyhow, my plan for today is I wanted to target a couple of different topics. And I really wanted to start with your classical background because I am a classical guitarist. I spent my whole life, working on my classical skills, and I kind of started to become interested in making my own music, coming up with my own compositions. But it happened a couple of years ago, but I never really took the courage, to actually get into it. And I'm really interested in your background and how that inspired your journey as a musician now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you started with classical violin and piano, right?
Correct, yeah.
So I was wondering how your background in those instruments influences your current music, the current music you make, and your guitar playing today.
Yeah, I'm really glad I started out from the classical world. Honestly, I taught myself guitar, and the only reason I was able to do that was because I had, I think, like classical training in piano and violin. I talk about it in some other podcasts, but my whole history with that is really funny. I hated music growing up. I felt it when I played, but to me it was, I'm sure a lot of people in the classical world can relate, but there's a lot of pressure sometimes, for auditions, for competitions, for things like that. And I was a kid being put into the competition circuit, and, I was practicing 4 hours a day. And if I didn't win, I love my parents. They're very hard on me. So I felt like I got really sick from all that pressure, and then they forced me to stop doing everything, all piano lessons, all violin lessons, all orchestra stuff, and I was in the hospital for probably on and off 4 years, something like that.
Wow.
And that's when I started to teach myself guitar, because I was classical music always felt like something I did for other people, and it was something that was pushed on me, and now I love it, but I think I had to drop everything, teach myself guitar, find music on my own terms. It was very liberating, right? Because I had teachers for everything else. In guitar, it's no one's going to tell me what to do. I'm just going to tinker around and play with different tunings and write my own songs with my ear. And through guitar, I fell back in love with classical music. And now I incorporate piano, violin into everything I do. And I'm so grateful that I have these skills, because when you're producing your own music, sometimes you want to hop on keys, or you hear strings, and it's just cool to not have to outsource for it. I can just play it myself, which
Right.
I really appreciate. It does affect how I play. I still play largely by ear, and I don't think I would have had this ear if not for my classical ear training. Just developing a really solid ear is probably the best thing you can do for yourself.
Okay, I don't think I have to introduce today's sponsor, the Dario, to anyone. Everybody knows them for their amazing string and accessory quality, but maybe you didn't know that they are also the string of choice for both Yvette and me. So I am playing the XT Carbon set, the high tension one, which brings so much brightness and life and overtone to my guitar. But my new favorite thing from them is this capo, this thing, which is, I'm telling you, this is the best capo I've ever had in my life. It screws so smoothly. It's really good with the, with the intonation, and there's really just no buzzing. Now, another thing I love is this headstock tuner. I've been a loyal user for over 10 years, and I just love this so much. It's subtle, it's solid, and it's also very precise. So I buy one and I put it on my guitar, and I just leave it on forever because it's nearly invisible, I'm telling you. And the battery lasts forever also. So if you're about to buy some new strings, check out the XT series. And while you're already there, please check out this capo and the headstock tuner as well. I can highly recommend all of these things. So thank you, Dario, for sponsoring this episode. Thank you so much. And now we're jumping back to the episode.
I still kind of play piano very intricately. Play guitar very intricately. I think if I didn't have my piano training, I would not be able to like do a lot of the technical stuff that I have. We have a visitor.
Oh, yay!
Oh, come here, baby. Where are you? Sorry.
This is instant 100,000 views and clicks.
My God.
So
come on. All right, he's gonna hang out in my lap because he's a spoiled baby. You're so
that's
goofy.
Cool. I can't wait to have dogs.
I know. Moving here, I didn't even want a dog, and then it just kind of happened, and I was like, he was a rescue. They found him on the street. They found him on the street, and okay, thank you. All right. Thank you, Baba.
Taking the show.
Yeah, okay, he'll be happy in my arms, otherwise he'll whine. But yeah, the intricate way I play is totally because piano. Being able to write and hear polyphony, I feel like that's all piano. Violin helped me a lot with like accuracy and muscle memory because it's fretless, right? So you don't really have a reference. So violin, I feel like it just really helped me feel where the pitch is. And I fully believe that the way I write and the way I play is just a culmination of every instrument I played growing up, kind of just wrapped up into one. And I think like the way I think about music is very still like on the piano, I visualize it that way. One thing that rock music taught me about the classical world, which I think is important to talk about in this podcast, especially because I did a bunch of stuff with like string ensembles, and everyone from the classical world seems to like have this block in their head sometimes, but I was such a perfectionist coming in from the classical world. Like, when you play Baroque music, when you play classical music, there's like very specific rules you have to adhere to. You can't be too expressive with Baroque stuff because of the limitations of that era. And, with certain things, I feel like you have to, it's just an orchestra in particular, you have to like blend in, right? And for me, it was very difficult starting to do shows in the rock world because they're never perfect. They're just, you spend, I just experienced this actually, you spend all month preparing for something, you show up to the venue and, the sound person just isn't the best or doesn't understand your vision, but you somehow have to present everything you prepared for in a month at the hands of this person who doesn't understand what you're going for. So sometimes it can be very disappointing. And I think I've played over like 500 shows now, maybe in the past 8 years. And I had so much stage fright. I still kind of have it, but it's a lot better. And that comes from, in the classical world, I always had to do solo recitals and things. And I just always had this knot in my stomach. And I was like, it's such a big deal. Like, I have to play everything perfectly. Everyone's watching me and judging me. And I took this attitude into when I started being in a band, and everyone else was like, that was so fun. And I was like, I hated it. It was shit, blah, 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 blah. I still do this, by the way. I'm not recovered from this. Like, I still, when someone says, hey, nice set, I'm like, thanks. So like in the second song, there was an issue with feedback. And then like, I accidentally didn't tap in the correct delay. I just like vomit everything I did wrong. And I didn't have this epiphany till recently, but what really helped me kind of overcome hating every show I've ever played is just focusing less on myself and more on the audience reaction. I think that's what makes rock shows kind of special. I guess like when I say rock, I mean just like non-classical, like it can be indie, but you get like an audience reaction, right? Like people are real time reacting to what you're playing. Like I think if I was listening, I was listening to like Tchaikovsky or something being performed by an orchestra. If someone was like, "Woo! Ow!" like, you know, people would be like, "Yo, what are you doing? Like, shut up." You know, it's rude. You're not even allowed to like clap early. So like
you're not even allowed to cough or like, you know, clean your throat.
I used to go outside to sneeze, like growing up, so I totally understand that. At a show, you know, people are talking, people are laughing, and what really helped me start enjoying performing more is just like paying attention to the audience. And it's less of like a selfish thing. It's more like, hey, I'm giving this energy to you, and if I'm not having a good time, everyone's gonna feel it. So I have to be, even if I play the sloppiest thing ever, I just laugh. I just like laugh at myself or like make a joke of it, still dance around, still smile, and then everyone tends to still have a good time, is what I've discovered.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's a lot. But you know,
Sorry.
I completely understand. No, it's just I completely understand what you're saying, because you know I went through the whole you know competition and solo recital part with the knot in the stomach and
Sorry, he's like falling asleep.
No problem. It's just it was nice. It was adorable. Yeah. look at the little eyes.
I know.
Yes. So my point is that I think we classical musicians often forget how, you know, a performance or playing a concert is just as much about the audience and the community experience as it is about representing the composer and creating, you know, representing the composer's vision and idea as best as we can.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting how you know you see this clear evolution in your performance, in your music, how it shaped over the years. You mentioned how you're still thinking in more in terms of more in a pianist way when you compose music or when you make music. Do you mean it as like you're thinking in terms of voicing, or what did you mean by that?
Yeah, like I feel like when I hear a melody, I automatically hear every harmonic possibility, like, and that's just like a piano thing for me, you know, like if my lead melody is like my right hand and like the drone notes are kind of like what my left hand would play underneath it, and it's like a lot of times I feel like when I write a melody, I hear the exact thing I want my left hand to play, if that makes sense. And so on guitar, like on piano, you know, it's some, you know, you can play piano a lot of ways, but you know, when you're starting out, it's like, you know, your right hand's a lead melody and your left hand's just playing chords to like accompany, right? You're like following the melody. And I feel like on guitar, I kind of do that still, where I'm like playing a lead melody, but then the lower strings kind of drone out and follow that melody to like make it sound very full. So I actually struggle to write like a monophonic line. It's more like everything I do has like polyphony and sometimes like rhythmic things going on that are more like polyrhythmic or syncopated or like things like that I totally take from my piano upbringing.
I guess probably this is why, you know, when I started to listen to your music, what occurred to me immediately is how melody driven your music is. I mean, with all the interesting rhythms as well going on and everything, but it's just so heavily it's just so melodic. And sometimes I listen to players with similar or slightly similar style, where the focus is more on the rhythmic element or like dressing elements, like alternate techniques or like special techniques. And I think maybe in your music it can be heard a little bit that you are coming from a classical background because of that melody-driven aspect. I think even before I heard that, even before I knew that you had classical background, I already felt this classical sense of melody leading or melody structuring, you know?
That's awesome.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, melody is the most important thing to me. Like, and I feel like one thing that happened to me in my career is initially I got known for being like more technical and like, I don't think I'm a virtuoso, but like virtuosic. And I initially felt so much pressure to fill those shoes. I was like, wow, everyone, because the first thing that went viral was like me playing like a me playing like tapping, like, you know, really fast. And like, it was very progressive and complicated. And, you know, I like that kind of music. It was fun for me. It was like, I wrote that for myself. And then that is what people saw and were like, wow, she's like very technically proficient. And I was like, shoot, everything I do now has to top that or be reminiscent of that. And so that was one of my biggest mistakes. Well, I guess I wouldn't say mistake because I am here now and no regrets. But like, you know, I think initially I was like, I have to keep up with myself. And the last thing I did. So I started writing music that was very technical, and I hated performing it because it was so, I felt like on stage I was so sterile. Like, I want to be rocking out. I want to be dancing around. I want to be feeling it. But instead, like, I watch the cameras come out and I'm like, great. Like, I'm approaching a really difficult run. And if I don't nail it perfectly, this is going to end up on the internet and everyone's going to think I suck. So I hated
You know, this
playing.
is so classical musician of you. This is so beautifully classical musician of you. Everything you're saying it perfectly aligns with the story, you know, with the sad anime story background story.
Yeah, I was like, I will disappoint everyone if I don't nail this run. But then I was like, you know, like I kind of had a little powwow with myself a couple of years ago, and I was like, I want to do music as my career, and I don't want, and we'll probably talk about this later with social media stuff, but I'm like, I don't want everyone else's expectations of me to define what I put out artistically, because art kind of is supposed to be this thing. I taught myself guitar to help myself heal from what an eating disorder at the time is what I had in the hospital. So for me, it has to be something that is fundamentally for myself. And I was like, I'm not having a good time playing live. I'm writing music that stresses me out. And like, what are the things I actually care about out of a music career? Like, what do I want to do? And I realized that like the thing I love the most that makes me the happiest is writing music that is emotive and makes people feel something. Melody, like having a melody that is, you can sing back and is catchy. I feel like I love that. When I catch someone humming something that I've written, it's like I'm like, yes, I got you. Like, I did it. I got you. Yeah. And then helping people, because like music is, if I do it for myself, if I'm up there like, yeah, look at me, I'm like really good at guitar. Like I kind of don't care. Like that reminds me of my competitive classical background, which is using music as a means to like defeat other people. And I think I'm just allergic to that attitude. So these days I'm like, I want you to like hear something I play and be like, oh my God, I want to play stuff like that. I want to use pedals. I want to like be able to make people feel things. And I see the value of music as something that is very healing rather than something as destructive.
That's another very, very good example of how, you know, coming from this classical training can put so much pressure on you. And it's just so impossibly hard to get rid of it. And, you know, it's just so inspiring to hear how you seem to find a good place for yourself now. I mean, you seem to be in a good place with your music now, and that you have left those competitive feelings behind. Maybe
it's been a process. Like I think I've done it in phases. Like initially, you know, I started writing music for Covet that was very technical, and then I was like, well, I'm just gonna write catchy stuff that makes you like want to dance and feel things, and with the help of effects and production, like, you know, it's great. And then nowadays, I recently just kind of like blew up my whole career, like figuratively, not literally. But I'm just doing solo stuff now, and I'm kind of starting over. And I feel like even if it, like, again, I checked in with myself a couple years ago, like, what's important to me? Like, integrity is, I think. And I don't want to just like end up in a thing that I don't feel anymore just because it's making money and like experiencing success. And perhaps that makes me the stupidest person on the planet. But I kind of don't care because I really just want to make art that I'm proud of. And I want to make sure that what I put out into the world is something that like really I can confidently stand behind and be like, yes, this is me currently. These are the values that I want to put out. And this is like the kind of message I want to send to people who maybe want a career of their own. And even if it means starting over and like wiping the slate clean, I think it's scary. It's kind of like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. But I think it's going to help me have a long career because that creative spark that we all have, you know, sometimes I feel like it's just embers or ashes, right? Like it's not that strong, but I want to make sure that I'm blowing on it, giving it oxygen so it stays this like big fire until the last day on this planet for me. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I think I read your Instagram post recently where you were talking about this exact same thing, how you're kind of starting over a little bit and you're focusing on your solo project. What does it mean on the practical field? You know, in practice, what does this mean to you now?
Well, I kind of started feeling like I was pigeonholed in a certain category, like, you know, progressive, like technical, virtuosic, like metal stuff. And it's not that I don't like it, but I feel like the things I want to write aren't necessarily from that genre. But one thing that people will find in this industry is once you've carved a lane for yourself, it's kind of hard to deviate from that. Like people, like marketing publicists, like people will just automatically be like, oh, she's played with this band, this band, this band. She's associated with these artists on Spotify. She must be this. And a lot of people don't really like listen. They like kind of just like make decisions based off of association. So wiping the slate clean for me means like, I'm going to do something so radically different in another direction that it kind of is, I call it disruptive. Like, I just like want to.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah. You know how you said like in the beginning, sheet, you know, like the O sheet, like it's kind of like polarizing. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm going to do stuff that's probably going to be polarized. The last thing I did was more like indie, like shoegazy kind of like dream pop. And that's not particularly polarizing. It's like very pleasant. But I'm just going to go more towards like that kind of stuff. And the next thing I'm going to put out is like hyper pop. So I think that's going to make people feel weird. Like, where's the tapping? Where's like, you know, all of that stuff. And I'm like, well, I think it's unfair to say that like an artist has to do one thing their whole life just because that's what people want from them. Like, I'm curious about so many things, right? You wouldn't expect a chef to just make one type of food their whole career. Right? That's ridiculous. And so it's like, I just want to make all types of food. I'm so interested in food. Replace food with music. I'm so interested in music. I'm so interested in production and like growing and learning things. And I just want to like speak as many languages as I can. So I don't want to do everything. And it's going to be confusing and weird. And people might not like me for it, but whatever. I'm having fun.
You know, I can relate to that a lot because I remember after playing classical guitar music for, I think it was around the time when I was already playing for like 15 years, maybe a bit more, like 17 years. And it was the first time I wanted to publish a video game music cover or arrangement on my YouTube channel.
Cool.
And it sounds so silly that I was stressing over it, you know, because I have been playing classical guitar music exclusively for 17 years. And it was just, but, you know, it wasn't like a wild turn. It was just a really nice video game music arrangement. And I remember I had to like internally, I had to make peace with myself to say, but Betty, you love this song. This is great. You play it well. You're having fun. Just go for it. And I had to do the talk to myself to get it out. Yeah. It's weird. And it also reminds me of another thing. So I like to paint just for fun. I'm not a very good visual artist, but cool. I used to feel so insecure for not being able to settle down with one style. There are some people with very, very solid, very, very clear style. And when you look at their works, you immediately recognize them. And I never felt like I can commit to a stylistic choice, because then I felt like, I'm not supposed to make that other type of, silly painting. And for years, it kind of held me back from actually making any kind of visual art, like to sit down and make a painting or drawing. And then at some point, I kind of just started to learn to accept that, okay, maybe today I want to paint this silly cat, fat cat with a tiny guitar, and it's going to look very childish. And tomorrow I'm going to try and paint a realistic portrait. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is okay. I think that's what you're talking about.
Okay, in fashion, how are you meant to figure out what looks good on you if you don't try on every outfit, So, sometimes I think the most important thing anyone can do starting out is to, or not even starting out, at any point in your career, try as many different things as you can. If you're curious about something, do it, try it. And as long as you're having fun and it feels right, you feel harmonious inside, I think then you're on the right path. And screw what other people want you to do, I think being a YouTube presence is really hard because, I don't have that strong of a YouTube presence. I'm not on it a lot, but, you run this podcast and I'll do so many other things. And I feel like the comment section is it's just scary. It's the worst. I know. And people are so savage to girls sometimes. It's just yeah. I don't know what kind of comments you get, but I kind of just make a point of not really reading a lot of it, just so I don't amplify. I'm a very anxious person. When you say you have to talk yourself into being it's okay to think, I'm the same way. I'm oh my God, I hope I'm coming across correct. I hope this isn't going to offend anyone. I hope this is exactly what I intend it to come across as. And yeah, it's very hard. I'm sure when you were starting out, you didn't have that much of that, anxiety, but the more you grow, the more it kind of gets amplified.
Yeah, especially because, after some point, like you described with the tappy technique, once you feel like you're known for something, you also start to categorize yourself more, and you want to set yourself up to a certain standard as well. So you label yourself with all sorts of things you haven't done before. Because when I started to upload videos on YouTube, it was just let's record something and let's upload it. And I had I didn't have very clear expectations. And now I have this whole strategy and idea in my head that, okay, what exactly we're doing and how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to feel. And if it's a little bit not like that, I get anxious about it.
Yeah, of course. 'Cause you have this not a formula, but this thing that is tried and true, and experimenting outside of that is really scary sometimes. I know it's ages ago, but I really enjoyed, this is controversial, but I know the pandemic was a really rough time for a lot of people, but I actually really enjoyed having that time during the pandemic to do a bunch of stuff that was purely experimental and, not what I usually do. And it was really good for me. I think one thing that happens when you're on this fast-paced track to like, this is your career and this is the thing you have to do, is you don't have time to mess up anymore. Like making a mistake and not succeeding, like failing, you can't afford it, right? When you're like really busy. So you tend to do the thing that's safe and do the thing that like, is going to work. But I feel like during the pandemic, I just kind of wrote a bunch of music. I learned to record during the pandemic. I recorded a bunch of songs that I feel like I'm never going to use for anything, and maybe they're not the best, but like I learned so much through those like mistakes, and I think it's really important for everyone to make time for themselves to be able to experiment and make mistakes. But it's difficult because I know people have to pay the bills and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know what, you said it may sound controversial, and I'm also usually afraid to admit this, or like I try to, I'm using a lot of disclaimers and saying, I know it was bad and I understand that, and I'm so sorry for everybody's loss, and all those things. I say all those mandatory words because I know that I don't want to upset anybody.
Yes.
But then I always say that it was good for me personally because I could hide away, and for me that's where my career started during the COVID, and I haven't had anything as a musician before COVID, and coming out of COVID I could support myself as a musician.
So
like,
cool.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and you needed that incubation time, right? You needed a time to experiment and get your thoughts together and get, kind of have an opportunity to really invest in yourself like that.
Yeah.
And bet on yourself.
And, also just, so when I was at school, during the COVID, I was still a university student. But if I had to go to school every day, I probably wouldn't have uploaded any videos because, I just couldn't have handled the situation that I upload something and the next day I go to school and there are my peers and friends and they go like, hey, I saw your video on YouTube. I just felt so itchy even thinking about it. So that isolation and not having to face anybody after uploading a stupid video, that was so good for me.
Yeah, I think, I was touring nonstop before the pandemic, and it was profitable, but I went through some stuff where I never really got to deal with my mental health, but I was just being pushed on the road, like nonstop to like perform. And I'm really good at like shoving aside my feelings and just being like a robot, but over time it eats away at you, and it's like that most unhealthy thing you can do for yourself is to stuff the trauma and the emotions down. And I think during the pandemic, that's when I finally had a chance to be like, oh my God, I feel all of this right now, and I'm like, I need to deal with this before I go on the road again, because it's like otherwise I'm gonna just burn out. So for me personally, I think I needed that time to really not like recover my resources emotionally, psychologically, and just do something that was really replenishing to me. Like, and for me, it was writing. I wrote an album during that time. It was like, I poured all of my emotions into that. And, sometimes the album's very uplifting because it's like, I wanted to play music that was the way I wish I felt, instead of like writing songs that are like sad or whatever. I was like, well, it's just going to amplify how I feel. So music is this like really healing thing. And I had all this time. So I was like, well, I'm just going to experiment with tones. And I did a bunch of pedal demos during that time. And a lot of those demos ended up becoming the songs on the record. So it was all in all like really important. And yeah, like you, I have the disclaimer, like I know that it was a horrible time for a lot of people. A lot of people had anxiety, a lot of businesses closed, and the world was just turned upside down. But I think it's important to stay positive, and when there's a huge fire in a forest, sometimes it's like kind of essential because it helps some people reevaluate their life path and reevaluate like what's important to them, and then out of the ashes little sprouts grow, and they're way healthier trees. Sorry, I'm like so lame, and
That's
I feel like
so beautiful.
I'm always doing
Cheesy
like
and
analogies.
beautiful. No, so cheesy, so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I loved every word. No, but seriously, I think you just opened up so many little lines to continue this conversation that I'm so interested in on your what your take is on. Oh, sorry. Sometimes my English stops working, and
No,
it's
it's
just
great.
trying. I feel like it's generating the next word sometimes.
I understand.
Anyhow, so you mentioned burnout a little bit, and I think you kind of started to cover how you would deal with it. But I was just wondering, what's your way, to prevent burnout or like these creative blocks, and how you can deal with this? Because as musicians, you also said how we have to just push and push and push ourselves. It's like a never-ending process, and you have to show up every day, and you have to be prepared. You have to be creative. How do you deal with all that?
My answer always comes back to when it starts feeling like something I'm doing for other people and not myself. I know that sounds really bratty, like it's impossible to live in a world where you never have to do anything for anyone else. Like, you can't just be like, I want to buy a boat today and then like go do that. Like, that's not realistic. But I think with music, as soon as it starts feeling like something that I call it like customer service, like I don't think art should be customer service. Art has to be something that you do to replenish yourself and your soul, not to be cheesy, but I think when I feel burnout, it's because I'm doing too much customer service. I'm doing too much, like, I'm doing things for capitalist reasons and not, and we live in a capitalist society, so we have to make money. Like I said, it's how I put, bread on the table, figuratively. But I think when it starts feeling too much like that for me, that's when I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes. I need to do something for myself. I need to just like experiment or play guitar and not really be doing it for a reason, like a purpose. Like, I need to just play guitar for the sake of playing guitar. And so many times I find that, like, if I just allow myself to have a day of like, hey, you don't have to write a song today. You don't have to do that demo today. You don't have to like do it. And just play with some new toys. Just sit here and like jam out with yourself. I tend to like lose myself in hours and hours of that. And I start to feel like, I don't know if you get this, but like when stuff feels right, yeah, I get this like tingly feeling in my chest, like when I hear something in my head that I want to do, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this tone, I want to like make it this melody, like I hear this melody, and I always close my eyes too. I don't know why. Like when I'm playing it and it locks in the way I want it, it has the impact I want it to have. I feel like this tingly feeling, and sometimes I jump around and it's really silly. But yeah, that's that feeling I'm chasing, where it's like, that's why I got into music in the first place, is because it just makes me feel like I like laugh. It's so fun. And days like that are so important.
If you enjoyed this episode so far, please consider to support my work on a monthly basis on Patreon. Patreon allows me to create more videos like this one, podcast episodes, educational content, and music videos as well. So if you like my work, head over to my Patreon page and check it out. And thank you so much for considering to support me. For me, I think I would describe it as I feel like re-energized, like it's just that sudden energy, like burst of energy when I'm doing something just for the process and just for myself. It's just a sudden burst of energy. And while I'm making something for customer service, as you said, that's an awesome way to put it, I get tired over the process, But if I'm just playing and making sounds to just have fun and for the process, I'm not really getting tired, I'm really tired from it.
I have days where I don't go to the bathroom and I don't eat, and it's like 9 hours, and I'm like, oh my god, like where did that come from? And days like that are so important.
And how do you balance that with social media? Because most people I'm talking to have this issue where, we all know that we need to slow down, we need to take breaks, and we need to let ourselves to grow and to be present with our creative, I don't know, projects and processes. But at the same time, we are all kind of have to have a social media presence. I mean, it
Yeah.
is what it is nowadays, where I sometimes feel like this pressure to be there to like show up often and all the time. And now I'm
Yes.
posting like once a week on Instagram, but I used to post every day for
Yeah,
some
me too.
time, every single day. And I'm
Me
like,
too.
this has to stop. We're not doing this. This is not good for me. How do you feel about this? Or I don't know, how do you handle this?
I feel like people are gonna fight me over this, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna tell the truth as to what I really think because I think it's important. So I owe my whole career to social media. Like I'm just gonna start out first and foremost by saying like I have respect for it and I would not have what I have today if I didn't post, if I didn't make myself visible, right? You know how I got social media in the first place was I used to be an art teacher. I used to work at a school, and my high school student was like, "Hey, you're so stupid for not having an Instagram," and I'm just like, I don't want that. Like, I'm just gonna go home and like, paint, like I just like, and she made me an Instagram and I posted guitar videos on it, and then immediately like there's traction. It was a different time, so it was easier for things to pick up steam, and I just started touring and got endorsements and bam, here I am. And I'm so lucky for that. I'm so freaking lucky. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I'm like it's just talent, because it's not, right? Like there's so many talented people in the world who lack the ability to put themselves in front of people because of social anxiety, because being very busy and not having the means to like be able to post. Like there's just a plethora of reasons why someone might not be visible, but I happen to have the thing that allowed me to gain a bit of an audience, and I'm so lucky for that. But I think over the years I realized that, well, first of all, I think the world got greedy, and I think companies started being like, we could monetize every aspect of it. And they literally have like, okay, wait, I want to figure out what I want to say first. I think
Just take your time.
An amazing tool. It is such a great tool for self-promotion. Like back in the day, you couldn't do half of what people do these days because it was up to labels. It was up to like the people with the advertising power to do it. But now you can be your own advertiser. You can be your own brand. You can do everything, and that's so great. But it comes with caveats. And I think it is such a tricky game to play without getting lost in the sauce. I realize I'm very sensitive. So for me, like, I think what I make is something that I'm going to guard forever because I don't want it to belong to anyone else. Like it always has to belong to me. And I find that sometimes playing the social media game, it starts to, we become customer service and we start to cater to like what the audience wants. And, there is a side of that is very valid. Like, content creators and stuff, I think you have to make content that's like appealing to people. That's the whole game. But for me, I'm like, I really value like making art, and I want to make I want to make something that can exist in a vacuum without spectators and audience, and it still has like something to it that's like important to me, I think with everything I do, I still give away a little bit of myself, and that's a dangerous game to play. But so yeah, like I said, social media is a great tool for self-promotion, but to attach your whole value to it as a human being, as an artist, as like to be like, my whole self-worth revolves around what people think of me and what the numbers say. I think that's not only foolish, but very dangerous, because the whole thing is structured to make us like addicted to it, right? So They literally have a team of like psychologists studying gambling behavior and addictive behavior. And it's like, they'll do the thing where they give you a big reward at first, and then they'll pull it back and make you like desperate to get that validation again. And once you start reading about it and seeing like how all of this is structured to basically be the most profitable, addictive thing in the world, you'll start to realize like, oh my God, I should not tether my whole self-worth to this thing. It's a dangerous, tether it to something else. Tether it to like how dope a certain tone makes you feel, or like your ability to write a song, like, yeah, that's my whole spiel. I don't want to sound like too negative or too much of a doomer, but just over the years I realized like, man, this thing is designed to make you feel like shit about yourself. And the more, and like to mindlessly scroll, like the amount of time that I spend like just looking at, like, I'm not really on Instagram, but Reddit is something that like for some reason has just captured my heart. And man, I'm just like on there like scrolling. I'm like, I could be writing, I could be playing acoustic guitar. I used to spend my time playing, like just experimenting with stuff. But now I'm like, I wanted to turn off my brain and just like mindlessly scroll, and it's like really bad. So like I guess like my whole takeaway is like, it's a great tool. The caveat is like, make sure to not let it influence how much you feel about yourself too much, because just because your engagement is not great, or like people aren't liking your content as much as they used to, number one, it was designed to be that way. The algorithm has changed. Number two, like, it's not a measure of how valid what you have to say is, because it's like, maybe it's just not the thing that pops off. I was just talking to someone the other day. It's like, if you play a beautiful moving piece in a dark room, right, and you post it, it's not gonna reach as many people just because of the dark background. I'm sure you know about this. Like, yeah, the dark background is not gonna make people want to click it, and also it will just be buried by the algorithm because it's not like bright person's face in a bright room, high quality camera, But does it make the song less valid? No. Like, someone doing like a cover of the McDonald's theme is gonna like pop off because they have, well, that's actually kind of sick. Sorry, I guess like, someone doing like something that's not necessarily like creative, but like it's like a really dope cover, like, but they shot it in a nice studio with, like, that's gonna pop off. But it doesn't mean that it's your art, the song that you made for yourself, is less valid than this other thing. There's so many things to consider. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No, you have absolutely valid points. So all those things you're saying were a struggle to me at one or another point in my social media, career or presence, like tying my self-worth to my engagement and how many people are interacting with what I'm putting out. That's been a thing for me. And then I fell on the other side, feeling that, oh my God, this is a bad system and I am a part of it. I'm supporting this bad system.
I struggle with that every day.
By just being on it and making this post and just posting this one video is I'm just standing behind this whole thing, and I'm supporting it, and I used to jump back and forth between those endpoints, and it's not been great.
Do you know what I struggle with is like, I think about our internet space as like a space that we can pollute, and I think like everything that I put out, like, we are just inundated with like all kinds of advertising content, people selling things, and I think it's like kind of bad for our brains, And I think with everything that I put out, like, I just don't want to add to the pollution, because I do think that like online space is kind of, we like to think of it as unlimited, but I think it can become well, I don't want to get too deep because there's a lot of theories about this, but it can become just polluted with stuff that is like it's not substance anymore. It's just like ads and us trying to make money off of each other, and I just don't want to be in a space that's like that. And everything I put out, I have to make a living. Like, I'll market myself, and I'll market a song, or I'll market like, hey, I made some art, or I made some merch that I want to sell, but I just want to do it thoughtfully and not just like I think there's a trend now where everyone just like takes their song and records the same song, them singing it, but like in a billion different places, and that's like good for promoting it, but it's like kind of just, it's not really like, I don't know, I don't want to sound judgmental, But it just seems like fluff, you know, like just putting as like quantity over quality, I guess.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I totally get what you're getting at. It's what's funny is that my classical musician perfectionist brain started to, just work immediately. Just, the little red light turned on immediately in my head because at on one hand, you want to share process and you want to feel free to share recordings and videos that are not perfect, right?
Yes,
Because
of
you're a
course.
human. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, you want to share things that are as good as you can make it, like, to hold yourself to a certain standard, because you don't want the world to be polluted by bad quality stuff. So you want to make good quality stuff because that's where you want, the world to head towards. And that's a weird mixture of feelings.
I don't mean
right?
to interrupt, but I want to
Go
say
ahead.
that your process stuff is absolutely not pollution. It is so important for everyone to see unpolished rocks, like things that are kind of rough around the edges, things that are like a little bit like not the final I think it's so important because then it's relatable, right? It makes people feel better that you know, they're not immediately getting that perfect thing. It's a process, right? It takes sometimes years to finish a song for me. Like I think like sharing process moments, that is not pollution. I think the pollution I'm thinking about is more like just stuff that's almost like fake. You know, like it's fake and it has the purpose solely of selling something to you, not of like being an authentic expression. And I sound so pretentious right now. I'm so sorry. But like I just think that's the kind of stuff where we have to be careful of how much we put out because it feels like lying to each other, right? I was gonna say it's so important to show yourself making mistakes and all that. There's a book that I can't pronounce the author's name, but I think you should read it. I think it's going to be amazing. I just got through it and it's a bit dense, but it's called Saving Beauty, and it's
Saving
about that
beauty.
exact thing. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take my phone and look it up really quick. I just think I
I
really
found
want
it.
to.
I found it.
Okay, cool. Yeah. By Byung-Chul Han. I hope I said that right. But yeah, it's such a good book that talks about this exact predicament of
I'm
perfectionism.
gonna read it. Yeah,
Polished.
sure. Thank you so much for the recommendation.
Yeah, of course. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking about being afraid to share imperfect stuff, but I actually think that's like the dopest thing you could share.
Cool. Yvette approved. The
Yeah.
seal of approved by Yvette.
A
Just
good example
stamp.
is like, what if you only shared photoshopped pictures of yourself, right? Pretty soon
Yeah.
everyone's going to be like, oh my God, I have to look like that.
Uh-huh.
But isn't it really important to show like, this is like what I look like waking up, or this is what I look like when I'm just like chilling in my house, not trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that stuff is like, it's realistic and it's so important because it makes people feel like better about themselves and where they are at in their career and their life.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I kind of maybe I don't see the value of my own process videos as much as as much as I should be. No, but this definitely puts it into a different perspective for me. So
I
yeah.
think it's so cool, like that kind of stuff. But obviously, like, I'm not saying like you should feel bad for not posting that stuff. I understand. Like when I do my guitar videos, sometimes I'm playing it like 100 times, and I'm like,
Yeah.
But I want to tell people that I want to be like, hey, I did this video, and yes, it is perfect, but I literally played it 100 times, so you shouldn't feel bad about yourself.
I'm sure people will love to hear this. People need to hear this, that professionals need 100 take to get it done the way they want it to. Because sometimes people think we just pick up the guitar and play it immediately, the way we want it to sound, and no,
Yeah.
nobody does that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. I never heard it, or it's just not something I experienced myself. I'm really happy you brought up this book because I'm always looking for new stuff to read and just new art to explore. And just very briefly, I wanted to talk about your different mediums of art. You also mentioned the merch you're putting out, and the cassette players I've seen recently, the
Yeah.
T-shirts I loved, not the T-shirts, the what are they called? The jackets, the jackets.
Oh yeah,
The
the I know what you're talking about, the art jacket that I made.
the art jackets. It was so cool. And so I feel like you're a musician, a multi-instrumentalist musician, you're a painter. I think you're making pottery. Am I
Yeah,
missing something?
yeah. I wouldn't consider myself an expert potter by any means. It's just something I do like for fun. But I love cooking. That's my new love. Like for me, cooking feels like almost like producing a song. I'm like, oh, how can I get all these elements to react together and like complement each other to like make you feel something when you taste it, you know? Like that sounds crazy, but I think cooking is so cool.
No, this is exactly where I wanted to get this, get this going, because I feel like I'm learning so much about music through painting,
Yes.
and about,
Painting.
I don't know, painting through videography, and how these different mediums I am touching on can reveal something new to me that I can implement into something else, into another art field, or field of art. And I just wanted to ask you, what are your experiences with this? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, like the way I write music is purely visual. Like I still think about like for instance my pedals, my guitar pedals are my colors that I use to color in things. Because you can keep a drawing black and white, or you can like put a little bits of color here and there to help it pop. And I think, or you can start with the color. There's just so many ways to tackle how you start. And for me, it's very, very visual. Everything I do, I think everything I write, I'm like thinking of a specific feeling or a song or a person or a character that I'm writing the song for. And that actually helps me live, is when I'm feeling nervous, is I just think about, oh, like what's the place I wrote the song about, or what's the person I wrote the song about. And I just think about the place or the person or the thing, instead of like, oh, I'm so nervous. I don't know if you have this, but as soon as you start thinking about your hands and like, oh my God, this is a hard part, I need to play, like that's when I mess up. You know?
Similar. Well, for me, if I start thinking about my hand, like what is it doing, I'm going to mess it up, because I
Yeah.
start to hear the voice, and if I start to hear the voice, it's over. But if
Yeah.
I'm just looking at my hand, and if I lock on the sound it comes, out,
Yeah.
made by that hand,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm very
Yes.
good, and that's a technique that I'm using to recenter myself when I'm on stage or when I'm performing.
You-
Immediately when I start to hear the voice in my head, it's over.
Yeah.
But as long as I can just look at my hands and focus on just one aspect of the music, like how it sounds, the melody, or just one thing I can point out, I'm good.
Yeah, I think about the melody, like I hum it to myself. I think about the feeling. And then sometimes if I'm like extra, like, oh shoot, I can't be in my head, I think about locking in with the drums like perfectly. And for some reason that takes me away from your hands are doing this thing that you need to do perfectly. Yeah, anyway, that's a tangent. But yeah, visual music for me is like super visual. And then I do all my album art, and I paint guitars too. So for me, it's like an extra way that I can use my art upbringing to kind of complement the music that I make. I've been really into trying to do more scoring and like game stuff recently as well. I'm new to it, but like it's really fun for me. And yeah, I really feel like every single art form is just so related to each other. It's like kind of you're using the same part of your brain, and you're having to tackle very similar challenges with your surroundings and yourself. Like I was talking to someone about skating one time, and I was hearing about how they approach, well, skateboarding, how they approach doing a line, like a line of tricks. And it's very much like you have to feel it. It's a very feel based, so you can't be in your head. It has to be flow state, and practicing it over and over again. I don't know how you practice things, but I practice with a metronome slow, and then I do it fast, and then I practice transitions, and I just repetition. It seems like every art form, it's about that. It's about tapping into something that's like more feeling based instead of like in your head, and then also just like doing it enough so that it's like embedded into your muscles.
Yeah, right. I think I practice similarly. I have lazy days when I'm just practicing in very stupid ways, but I get your point totally. Sometimes my practice is very stupid.
I hate practicing. I'm gonna tell everyone right now, like I literally don't practice, and that's probably why I like set that. But I love writing. What do you like the best out of recording, writing, or performing? Practicing, which one do you like the best?
I maybe of all the things, probably improvising a little bit.
Okay, that's actually really special for a classical musician, because I feel like a lot of classical people struggle with improv.
I don't struggle with it. Because it doesn't sound good or anything. It sucks. It's horrible.
I bet it sounds.
It's really crap. But because I gave up on sounding good, I have no expectations or like standards and anything for myself.
Yeah.
It's been so freeing. And when I practice an actual piece, or when I try to compose something, or like I have an idea for a piece of music and I'm trying to put it into a structure, I'm always trying to use the smarter part of my brain, the smart Betty. But when I improvise, I can just do whatever I want to, and that's when I can really tune into the sound and the color of the sound the most.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound great, but it's a lot of fun for me.
That's so important, the fun part. And then I understand like the color thing that you're referencing. It's funny. I'm so terrified of jamming and like improvisation. Like,
I would never do that with anybody.
Really?
No. I would never.
Oh my god! If I'm ever in the same place as you, we're gonna jam just because we both hate it, and it's funny. Okay.
Oh my god! Just imagine the two anxious person just trying to jam, both hating it so much, just want to get be done with it, get over it.
Have you ever been put in a situation where you just had to jam?
No, because, I'm a classical musician.
I get put in it all the time. I literally have a clause in my, like, when I work, it's like, she will not jam. Like, because everyone's always, like, with their guitars, like, let's jam. Let's get, like, a big jam sesh going. I'm like, no. I play in alternate tunings. I'm using my ear the whole time, and it's like, I will not do that. But I will, like, create loops with myself and, like, like, kind of play ambient stuff, and I can jam on that for days. But if you want me to like be on stage with like 4 guitarists like ripping solos, like no.
Yeah, I hear you. I absolutely. And just for some people, I don't know, I'm also an anxious person. Or I would describe myself as an anxious person.
I am too.
even if I feel, or even if I know that I have the skills, I would just be way too stressed out.
Yeah.
To be put in a situation like that. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just curious about you. Do you struggle with like, I have this thing where I feel like maybe it's my upbringing, but I don't want to stand out. And I feel uncomfortable if I'm like the loudest one, or like the one kind of, I don't know, just at like all the attention's on me. And I think I've enjoyed playing in a band because it's like, hey, I don't have to be like at the front. Like I don't have the lead singer syndrome where I'm just like, like in people's faces. And I feel like in jams I have that issue where I don't want to step on anyone else, so I end up playing nothing.
That's interesting.
I don't want to talk over someone with my guitar.
I totally get that. Well, for me, because being a classical guitarist is pretty much it's a pretty lonely form of music, form of musicianship, I how should I say? So I always felt like, oh, I think I know something that's cool, and I want people to see it. I want to show it to people. But then when I get in the center and people start commenting on me, that's when I realize that oh my God, I'm in the center. This feels horrible. This is scary. And I want to hide again.
Yeah.
And then I hide it for a little bit. And then I feel like, oh, this is so cool. I found something. Let's show it to everybody. Let's show it to the whole world. And I go back to the center. Same thing happens. And I'm like, it happened again.
Yeah.
And I'm just jumping back and forth. I'm always jumping back and forth. For me, what's the most noticeable part of this is my look. So, for example, sometimes I put a little more emphasis on, on just dressing up, I don't know, a little bit more in a feminine way or something.
Yeah.
Then I notice that I'm seen.
Yeah.
So I start hiding, like I start wearing t-shirts and like baggy stuff.
Yeah.
And I do that for 4 months or 5 months or whatever. And then I feel like, oh, I would love to wear a dress.
Yeah.
So I wear a dress and I get seen, I feel seen, and I'm like, ah! And I go back to the t-shirt.
I have the same thing. You know what's crazy is I think that's a byproduct of just being like a woman on the internet, because like
Maybe.
I think people like to comment on, people's appearance and stuff, like, and even if you just want to look nice, some like asshole's always going to be like, people only care about this because she's dressed like pretty and like blah blah blah, like, people always want to attribute it to something that's completely unrelated to like your ability or skill. I remember when I first started out, that first video that went viral for me, I actually cut my head off of it, and I was in a big baggy sweater. And the reason I filmed videos like that at the time was because I didn't want people to talk about how I was a girl. Like, I just didn't want that to be part of the conversation. I didn't think it was relevant. And I felt good that like that video got popular, even though it was just like my chin pretty much. And then later I started posting stuff where I remember I had this one video where I was in overalls. Like, to me, that's not sexy. That's just like farmcore or something. But then the comments were about like, oh yeah, look at her legs and like, stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God. So I started doing the whole, like, I'm going to literally make myself like baggy, gross, and like I just want it to be about guitar. But then I was like, why am I doing this? Like, why again, I'm doing customer service. Like, I'm like, well, I'm scared of what people think, so I'm like tailoring what I would normally do. So yeah, I so understand what you just said, like the whole wanting to wear baggy things, but then sometimes being like, well, I want to feel pretty, like,
Yeah, sometimes I just want to feel pretty, not for the sake of to present it on the internet. I just want to wear that that shirt. I don't know, something.
You should be proud when we're with a badge that you're beautiful, that you are talented at guitar, you are an amazing player, you are well-spoken, and you manage everything yourself. And I'm sure you have a lot of other traits. I just met you, but you should be so freaking proud of that. And if anyone tries to like take any of that away from you, be like,
I'm dead. Okay. That's so good. That's the nicest thing I've heard for a long time.
Oh, no, I mean it. Like, I think it's so why can't someone be beautiful and talented and like smart at the same time? Like, why do three things have to be so surprising when they exist together? That's the question I've been asking myself. It's like, I make myself smaller for people all the time because that's just how I'm anxious, and I don't want to be too loud. But like, I think over the years, I'm like, I'm proud. I'm proud that I think I'm funny. I think I'm good at what I do. And I think, like, I love fashion and I love expressing myself with fashion. So why should I mute any of that just because some asshole online's like, oh, well, nice boobs, or like, like,
yeah.
stupid.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, you should be so proud. I think, like, just from the brief period of time that we're chatting, like, I think you're so cool, and you shouldn't wear baggy things just because you think that's what the internet's gonna attack you for or something.
Oh my
But
God.
you look great in baggy things too. You know, like just yeah. Sorry, I will shut up.
No, this is just I can't. I'm Hungarian. We're not used to having or getting compliments or talking.
I'm American. And I'm open. I'm like too open.
No, this is lovely, and especially I earlier told you how you have been such a big inspiration for me to explore my own musical journey. So this is the best thing ever happening to me. I don't care about the viewers; they are going to tune out by now because it's all just my therapy session at this point. Yeah. But I don't care about it.
Screw it. I'm sure I'm sure so many people, especially like young women, who look to you need to hear this. I think it's important because they probably feel the same thing. They're probably so scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. You know what? Let's wrap this up with one last question. I have one last thing I wanted to ask. What's your biggest advice for aspiring younger musicians?
I would say when you're starting out, don't limit yourself to like, I am just this type of player and I only want to do this. Like I would say go out, experiment, try as many things as you can and take inspiration from everything. Just because you think something's like this word is weird, but like beneath you, it doesn't mean that you can't learn from it. And I think I've learned so much from a lot of people starting out, like hearing their stories. I'm like, oh my God, like that's inspiring me. So learn from everything and everyone. And also don't like, I guess this is a 3-parter. Number 2 is don't try to model your whole career after someone else, because I think you do the best trying to tap into the voice that you have inside and the things that you want to say that are sitting inside of you, and utilize learning from everyone as building up your toolkit. And then once you find your voice, then you decide which tools from your toolkit you draw to like build the thing you want to build. And then you're never going to be like as good as the person you're trying to be, so like you might as well follow your own path and really tap into the things that interest you. And the things that you feel like you have the most fun doing. I think authenticity is what I'm trying to get at here. And then the third part is, I touched upon this earlier, but really do not use social media as a ruler for yourself, as a way to measure how valid what you have to say is, because it's designed to make us feel addicted to it, and like it's designed to make you compare yourself and feel inadequate, rather than view it as like, oh my God, like my art isn't good because it's not popping off on TikTok or the gram. View it as like, this is a tool for me to get what I want to say out there, and I stand behind what I'm making because I had fun making it and I believe in it. And if this thing doesn't pop off, it's okay. You'll make something else that might pop off. Just like do it consistently, and as long as you stand behind what you have to say, it's going to be a good journey.
That sounds awesome. That's great. That's really great advice. We all need to hear that. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was, wow. Well, I didn't expect how this, I would have never expected this, but I'm so grateful for every bit of this conversation. This has been amazing.
Me too. This was like really helpful for me to get my thoughts out. I'm just really passionate about these things. So thank you for amazing questions, and also for letting me talk so much. I feel so annoyed.
Anytime. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to meet you.